Mini Wargamer Dave here from miniwargaming.com. Welcome, Wargamers, to the Shrine of Chaos. Today, we have Kirioth as special guest. You may know him from all of the videos that you've seen him on YouTube. He's been doing this since 2011. That's how long he's been doing this.
It's been
Well,
quite a while.
that's when you started your
Technically,
YouTube channel anyway. I mean, it's really the last 4 years.
technically before that, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually technically started YouTube before my channel existed, because I started out on a totally different channel. So I've
Okay.
kind of
Channel
I
hopped a little
hadn't
bit.
yeah, that's kind of put it into perspective as to just how long I've been like messing around with this, which is a little bit scary now, actually, to be honest.
I mean, you have racked up over 17 million views on your YouTube channel. Well, your current one, I should say, because there's more than one, which I did not know. So fantastic! You're just shy of 1,200 videos that you've done, and your style, which is I want to say it's you're a classic vlogger because you look at stuff. You have your daily your Monday reports and your sometimes Tuesday reports, and then you have your thoughts on new products, and then you have a whole different wide variety of different type of things that you like to talk about. You like to discuss things that are new, things that are questionable, things that make you think. Well, questionable in the sense that it's like I have a question about this, therefore I'm going to
Yes,
present it to the community, and let's see what your guys' thoughts are on it. But there's something I did not
and
know about
also
you
just
is
general questionable stuff.
general
But
questionable stuff. Something I didn't know about you is that you started out doing gameplay videos, which is kind of cool. That was
yeah, that
how did it
that was a.
change? How did that change? What was the
I
reason?
started to I just started to get kind of bored of like just video games in general. Like I for a while they were like the chosen escape, and I used that as like my winding down time. And before I had my before my channel was active, I was on another channel called Unit Lost, which I think is now rebranded.
Hmm.
But we did gameplay stuff. There was two of us, me and a friend Tom, and we did gameplay and played games together, and that was mostly what we did. We did a couple of podcasts every week as well,
Right.
and I kind of came out of that and started doing stuff on my channel and realized relatively, like I'd say maybe a year and a half, maybe a year in, I forget how long it was. I just started to realize I'm not actually enjoying half the games I play anymore.
Hmm.
Like I'm doing it because I'm used to it. Like it's a habit thing of, oh, it's time to relax, it's time to unwind. I'll play a video game.
Right.
And then realized I'm not actually relaxing or unwinding, and I'm not finding this game all that interesting. And it's kind of it's kind of gone away a bit there. I need to try and find something else to fill my time, and to maybe I should look at something else. And I've had like 40k stuff around for, well, since third edition, so however many horrendous number of years that is. And I'd kind of taken a break from 40k and just modeling and painting in general. And I kind of almost had that moment of going, I mean, I keep going back to Dawn of War and Space Marine and Dawn of War 2, and I keep reading the Horus Heresy books, and I should probably do something with all these models I've got lying around. Started painting, well, started kit bashing, more accurately, and went, oh, this is okay. This is the thing.
Hmm.
This is what I've been missing.
Right.
This is I should have been doing this all along. This is way more fun than all of the things that I've been doing to kind of just relax and unwind. And it just kind of built from there. I kind of started putting things together and didn't enjoy painting, but did it so I had a functional army. And then I kind of, by that point, I was still trying to do a bit of gaming stuff on the channel, but realized that one of the main components that made wargaming so much fun when I started it was talking to people about it.
Right.
Like having going to like the local game store, having a we used to have like a big meetup every couple of weeks where we'd get a bunch of games in, and just having loads of people to talk to and speculate with, and just that kind of communal sense of all doing something you enjoy. I was like, unfortunately, no one around me that I know anymore touches this. All the people I played with either moved away or they gave it up.
Hmm.
For a while, there wasn't even like a local gaming store to be had in my town,
Yeah.
because the one I used to go to shut down and then reopened, but in a tiny space. So there was no kind of community there because there was no space for a community. And so I was like, well, surely other people are talking about this. I can't be the only person who's sitting here with a YouTube channel going, wanting to talk about 40k. And without really checking, outside of looking to see how many people were doing like lore videos, I thought, well, I've already got a bit of an audience. I might as well see if any of them are interested. So I kind of started slowly kind of talking about 40k stuff, and then as I got more wrapped up in like the new releases and kind of it's around the time of like the Primaris being released and like the Primarchs coming back and the Death Guard redesign and all of that stuff. And I just, as soon as I started properly looking into it and getting caught up on new models, I was immediately massively sucked back in, and I was just like, this is my life again now. This is it. I want that thing. I want that model. I want to do this with that. That's it. I'm done. This is what I'm doing because this is way more fun than anything I've been doing in like the last few years. It's more interesting. It's more fulfilling. And I mean, clearly people are interested in talking about it because the videos that mention 40k are doing way better than the videos involving gaming. Right. So why am I still trying to hold on to this bit that I don't enjoy that much? Why don't I just talk about the thing I like? And yeah, that just set everything off, and it's just been kind of upwards from there, really.
Yeah. There was if I'm not mistaken, what you were saying there, it was right around like the dawn of 8th edition in the Primaris Marines. I remember that one video that you made, which was you're talking about, okay, these guys, they're new. Are they a good idea? Let's talk about this, guys. What do you think about these guys? And so that kind of like skyrocketed the discussion at that. And that was about 3 years ago, maybe a little more.
Yeah. That was. I found that really interesting as someone coming back into 40k, like, because I'd taken that kind of extended break. I don't think I'd really developed the same, I don't like, reverence, I guess, for Space Marines as a whole. I always loved the like adaptability of them, where you could decide on a custom chapter and then you could take any number of bits from other kits and you would have your own unique Space Marine faction, and they could look however you liked and be painted however you wanted, and you could make a backstory for them and that was, you know, fully integrated with the Imperium, or make them renegades, or you could do anything in between. But the actual, like, I was always a little bit out of sync with everyone else in my kind of gaming group, because I always thought the Tactical Marines especially just looked a bit too squat. It never really sat right with me, because I was like, they're the same height as guardsmen, but they're supposed to be tall. Like this, your average guardsman isn't like 7 foot, so why is he the same height as a Space Marine? And even though I knew really why, it still never was like, yeah, I'm absolutely 100% fine with this. I always found myself wishing if they were just that little bit, just scaled up, just that little bit. So when the Primaris stuff showed up, I was like, oh, they fixed it.
Yeah,
they're taller, they're the right scale, they're the right height. Admittedly, all the background stuff with the way they introduce them with the lore kind of means that it didn't really work like that technically, even though that's how it looked. But I was kind of on board with the models at the very least.
Yeah.
And a lot of the kind of discussion around the way they were introduced, I totally understood. But I could also see why Games Workshop went the way they did. And I found some of the arguments against, like, Call coming up with the Primaris kind of missing something, I guess. Like, to me, anyway. I always try and preface anything I say, stuff like this, where it's just me. Where I was like,
you hedge it with
it's my opinion, and my opinion is probably wrong. But like, I always thought, well, he didn't make them from scratch. It's not like he had nothing and then went, look, Primaris. Instead, he took your standard Space Marine and spent like 10,000 years messing with it to make it slightly taller and a little bit tougher. And like, that's it. That's all he managed, really. I mean, I know there's lots of in-universe stuff that is technically better, but when you look at the tabletop side of things, I was always like, yeah, they're a bit better, but they're not that much better. For 10,000 years work, you kind of expect something a little more
robust,
a little more extreme, a bit more robust, something like maybe more close to a Primarch, for instance.
Right.
And I always likened it to, because I do a lot of work on my own guitars and stuff, like replacing parts. I didn't make the guitar. It's the equivalent of the person who made the guitar making the guitar in like 1 week, and then me taking 4 years to replace the pickups. It's that kind of thing where it's like someone else has already done all of the work really quick, and then I changed one part and it took me the better part of a decade. It's like, it doesn't mean that I'm better than the person who made it. It just means I could tweak it slightly. And even then, I've not changed a huge amount. I've just done a little bit to make it better. And even then, has it been that successful after all? Like things like removing susceptibility to chaos corruption and stuff, which clearly hasn't worked all that well, or getting rid of all of the issues with Gene Seed when you've got Blood Angels that still fall into the Black Rage and the Red Thirst. And it's like, he didn't do a great job. So maybe it's not that bad.
So you got, okay, so Popcorn Scorpion says, you're comparing Gene Tech by Call to that of the Emperor.
Yeah, he didn't do as good a job as it. It's like all the work was already done, and then Cole just tweaked it, like just messed with it. He didn't do the whole thing himself. If he'd made like an entire if he'd made Primaris Space Marines from scratch, like if it was a case of, okay, we don't know how to make like any of this anymore, and then Cole just showed up and went, look at these amazing super soldiers I've made without any outside assistance, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I'm better than the Emperor, then that would be terrible. Yeah. That would be a horrendous way to do things. But I always viewed it as, this guy took so long in secret with apparently unlimited resources, and they're a bit taller and they're a little bit hardier.
He did what Fabius Bile could not.
Yeah. And Fabius Bile is, let's face it, more interesting and a lot more fun than Call is. So
I mean, I don't disagree. I absolutely agree with this. Yes, I'm a little biased. But...
But yeah, it's kind of, I do totally understand why the argument is made, and I don't think that Games Workshop actually handled the introduction of the Primaris that well, but I also think it's such a catch-22 with that particular issue. Introduce true-scale Space Marines, and a lot of people will go, well, now I can't use my Space Marines because everything's true-scale now, and it looks weird because these guys are supposed to be the same as the ones I already have, but they're taller, the armor looks different, like, it would be a weird introduction, and I think it would have ruffled plenty of people's feathers. But then introducing them as a separate type of Space Marine is like going to cause just as much fuss, but towards a different group. I don't think there was any way of them reasonably refreshing the entire Space Marine range they've done without upsetting people, because it's such an established core part of 40k.
So do you think
just showing up and being like, here you go, new ones, they're bigger and better?
Do you think they'll ever get rid of the old Marines? Do you think they'll ever do that?
Yeah.
You think they will?
I genuinely do. I don't think it's like an imminent thing. I don't think we're going to like wake up next week and they're just going to be gone off the store or anything, but I can easily see them like phasing them out. And I think a step towards that was introducing 2 wounds to Firstborn Space Marines.
That's a step towards it. Why is that a step towards it?
Well, at the moment, before that change, your tactical Marines and your Primaris Marines, or like your standard Firstborn Space Marines and your Primaris Marines, they had like a different, not necessarily a different role on the tabletop as such, but they had different stats. You couldn't just go, okay, well, like if you went to, say, a tournament or something, you couldn't plop down a tactical squad and go, I'm playing these as intercessors. Because the response would be, yeah, but they're not intercessors. They're a different model. They have their own unique kind of rules. Now, the lines between the two are blurring. So Primaris are 2 wounds and Firstborn are 2 wounds. Some slow changes to like what war gear they can take, the slow retirement of things like Devastator squads, for instance, and suddenly you've got a lot of Firstborn Space Marines who could conceivably have the same bolters, the same 2 wounds, the same everything as Primaris Marines. The stat lines are the same, but the models are different. And at that point, you don't need to sell tactical Marines anymore. You don't need to sell the Firstborn stuff, because people who already own them can use them as just Space Marines as a whole, and they don't need to support that side of the range, which is now so massively inflated compared to everything else. I just don't think it's realistic for them to continue supporting both Firstborn and Primaris. When you look at the size of the Space Marine range now, it is properly mad. Like, I'm not going to turn down a bunch of choice, because more choice is good for literally everybody. But if Primaris Marines are massively outselling Firstborn Marines, and if they're putting all of their effort into slowly replacing the range and having things that will take the role of the existing Space Marine range, I just don't think it's realistic for them to just keep them going in tandem. I think at some point they will effectively merge the rule sets of both,
Hmm.
and you will still be able to use your Firstborn as much as you like, because they'll effectively be Primaris on the tabletop, just not in like the model that they are. So I feel like it's going to be a slow meshing of the two until the stat lines are indistinguishable, until the war gear is pretty much indistinguishable. Maybe changing rules for Devastators so that you can only have like one type of weapon per squad, for instance, to fit more in with the Primaris line of, Hellblasters all have plasma. Like they could easily kind of do a little bit of wiggling slowly over time and make it so that you actually don't need to support the Firstborn line anymore, because you have an entire range of Primaris that effectively do the same thing on the tabletop, stats-wise.
That's a very interesting theory. Very interesting. That actually makes me think, because ultimately the miniatures company goal is to make money with it, and they do it in a fun way of creating this game and selling the minis for it and changing the rules and changing what you buy according to those rules changes. Yeah. But okay, so let's talk about maybe some of the Xenos armies that don't sell as often or don't sell as well as Space Marines. Like even the least selling Xenos army, they still make the miniatures for that army. That doesn't do nearly as well as the Firstborn Space Marines that are still being sold. And so
that is true, yeah.
If we're looking at it at a like model selling standpoint, I wonder, it's an interesting theory because I can see it happening, but at the same time it's hard to say. And
yeah, I mean that's the thing. I think there is a, maybe I'm overstating how likely. I think there is a good chance of it happening. Maybe it's not like a 100%.
It would be cleaner.
It
would certainly be cleaner from a collecting standpoint.
Yeah.
And lore-wise, because they would have to make it make sense lore-wise, because everything makes sense lore-wise before it makes sense on the tabletop. And then the
although that's one of the things that I found funny about the change to Firstborn Space Marines was the 2 wounds suddenly. In fact, I made a video about it where quite a few people said, well, they don't have to justify in the lore why they do rules changes. Rules change all the time.
Right.
And that I totally agree with.
Yeah.
But one of the core parts of the Primaris introduction was look at these extra tall Space Marines with 2 wounds because they are hardier.
Right.
Call has improved them. They are tougher. They are more resilient. And then suddenly Firstborn Marines are just as tough and resilient with absolutely no in-universe explanation whatsoever, which is what I found funny, because it was like, here's the justification for the Primaris Marines.
Yeah.
Here is the in-universe reason. And then they just went, oh, and Space Marines, Firstborn Marines have that too now. And that's it. But there's no mention of it in terms of in-universe justification, is there?
I guess
there's no book where they're
true.
like, okay, here you go.
No, that's true. You have a point there. You have a point.
I said it's because they'd eaten their cauliflower, but then people booed me for making a terrible joke. But like, it's just like, when it comes to that sort of thing, they are generally quite good at justifying big changes in the lore. But then again, they will sometimes just go, and now this is different because it's different. And you won't get any sort of outside explanation to that. But then again, it's not a static game. They constantly do change rules, and you can't like expect them to give explanations for every rules change in the lore, because they'd be there.
Yeah.
They'd be at it all day, every day, and the already, let's face it, kind of convoluted overall story
Extremely
of
so.
40k would get.
But
a kind of silly.
Big thing point. Like Space Marines, though, you would think that was like at the forefront, the most popular thing, that they would give some sort of explanation to that. But no, it's just okay. They have 2 wounds now.
Yeah, that was the whole. That was what made me laugh. It was like, it's less the fact that they've done it and more the fact that it was such a big selling point originally that has just now been like, yeah, that's just how it is. It's like, okay, sure. It's not a problem. It's not something that I'm like, how dare they not give us an explanation? But it just kind of. I just read it and went, I'm pretty sure that was a fairly major selling point before, but. Sure, why not? It's,
at the same time, that kind of makes sense. I could see that happening, because let's say let's say they do mesh it, right? It's like 10th edition, 40K. All of a sudden, tactical Marines and intercessors, it's really the same thing. It's just a matter of war gear, right? Stat wise, point wise, it's all the same. Lore wise, it is what it is. Cole made them 10,000 years. They're better, beefier, whatever. But gameplay wise, they're exact same. You can use the old ones. They count as the new ones. They're really the exact same. It's all good. We don't make the old ones anymore. We only make the new ones.
Yeah.
So do what you will. If you have models that are 30 years old, you may still use them. They still count as the Primaris stat-wise. They're not Primaris lore-wise, but they are stat-wise. So do what you will on the tabletop. That could still make sense.
I have to admit, part of my thinking behind that was the introduction of legends, like their way of supporting old models that are out of production, or in some cases just didn't have a model, giving them like a one-time rule set and going, we're not going to revisit these, we're not going to come back to them, but if you want to use this model that we don't make anymore, it's in Legends, it's got rules, you can still use it, you can still use it narrative play, open play, you can still use your old models. I think that kind of, for me, that kind of opened the door for them to be able to say, okay, well, we don't sell these anymore, but we're not saying you can't use them. Here's the rules. Because there's already precedent for that on quite a big scale now. They've moved quite a bit of stuff into Legends. And so, you know, I could easily see them kind of going, okay, Tactical Marines, Intercessors are now the same thing. Devastators, they're more complex. You can't just shift Devastators over because they have such a variation in weapons. It's nothing like Hellblasters in terms of like the loadout. So maybe it's like a one casualty at a time thing. You know, most of the Space Marine range is fine. In fact, these are just like the Primaris guys. But Devastators we're not making, and they're now in Legends. You can still use them. But they're not going to be supported in the future with changes to those rules. I could see it happening. I would clarify that it's not like a 100% totally, but I could easily see how they would do it and think that there's definitely more than a non-zero chance that at some point, like, they will just start to slowly shave away the firstborn side of the Space Marine range.
You know what?
Because they have so much variation now as well with the Primaris stuff.
That's an interesting one there, the Hellblasters, because out of all the other ones, it's like, you know, unless you're a purist who hates Primaris, if you're a casual hobbyist or one that isn't Primaris, you're like, okay, if I had to choose between Intercessors or Tactical Marines, I'm going to choose Intercessors because they're a bit better and they're so close points wise that it's just like it's a no-brainer of a difference. Whereas Hellblasters and Devastators, which one would you choose?
I mean, to be honest, I've always loved Devastators in a
right?
healthy way, so I'd go for Devastators regard. Although, to be fair, I'm probably not the best person to ask because my army list choices revolve entirely around how cool does this look? Cool, I'm in. That's it. Like, I don't have a huge amount of I'm not a competitive player, to say the least. I very much revolve my armies around what would be a lot of fun to put together and paint, and I could make an army out of. Is pretty much the way I go about most of my list building.
Yes.
But that being said, Devastators are just more versatile. They just are.
Currently, yes, absolutely.
By the fact that they can have so many different weapons options, they're not just locked into here's a bunch of plasma and nothing else. You can pick and choose what you use them for, which just by that nature makes them so much more versatile than their kind of direct counterparts. But then again, Games Workshop seem to be, especially with the Space Marine stuff again, seem to kind of be swerving away from versatile in a way. When you look at Intercessors versus even Tactical Squads, with Tactical Squads, you could at least take something. You can take a heavy weapon and special weapon. You can outfit your sergeant with whatever. Intercessors is just, here's a bunch of bolters. And it's the same thing with Hellblasters. Like, you can have plasma or plasma. Compare that to Devastators, where you can fit them out for pretty much whatever you like. And the actual choice that you get out of the box is massively limited in comparison when it comes to the Primaris side of things. So the only place that isn't like that is the vehicles. But in terms of the infantry, it's hugely simplified over what you would previously have expected from like a Space Marines kit. Things like Vanguard veterans and Stern Guard veterans.
Oh, so many options.
Those two are like some of my favorite kits that Games Workshop have ever done, especially the Stern Guard veterans. But again, it's like there's so many options. There's so many things you can put on them. You can kit them out in so many different ways. And I've not, admittedly, not looked at the rules for Blade Guard for, well, since they were first shown off, but they're not like brimming with weapons options. It's not like a Vanguard veteran squad where you can kit them out with whatever. They again,
have fewer options,
relatively way fewer,
but they're super strong.
Yeah, there is that.
They make up for it, and they're just brute like durability and strength.
I think it's an interesting like change of philosophy for them, because Space Marines were so very versatile in terms of how you could kit them out, and that's not to say that Primaris aren't versatile in terms of how many options you can bring, because God knows there's enough of that range at this point that you've got a good number of choices for stuff, but you don't have that same like individual squad level of versatility that you used to have with the Firstborn stuff. And that's clearly by design. It's like it's obviously been done. For me, I think it's mostly just been done to make it easier.
Yeah.
When you get into 40k, there's a good chance you're going to angle for Space Marines.
Yeah.
If you buy a box of Space Marines and it is literally all these guys have this gun, it's simpler for especially newer players than going, okay, all these guys have this gun. Apart from this guy who can have these guns, or that other guy who can have a couple of other weapons, and you got the guy who's leading who can have a couple of different weapons and a melee weapon if you want. Like it's not too many options, in my opinion, but I can see why they would strip that back. So it was just, you buy a box of Space Marines, here's 10 dudes in power armor with bolters, and off you go. You're ready. You're done.
Yeah, it's very much. It reminds me of 30k, just because of the simplicity and the weapons options.
I think the way that, I don't think it was like a kind of a nefarious Games Workshop like planning from the past sort of thing of going, now in 30k, if we make it so that, each squad just has the weapons they have, like there's not much in the way of variation, it mirrors perfectly with the Primaris stuff coming back with Gilliam and setting it all up as a plan. It works out perfectly. I don't think that's what they did, but I think they loved the fact that symmetry happened. I think they were like, oh, that's perfect. It's not what we went for necessarily, but it means that now there is genuinely a way to rationalize it. In terms of like the in-universe rationalization, you can easily look at it and go, well, these started development way back. They're using similar squad arrangements and tactics that were used in the Heresy, and of course they would. They were, that whole development was set up by the Primarch of the Ultramarines. Of course he'd set that stuff up. I don't think there's at any point, not that I've read anyway, been a suggestion of that literally being why, but it lines up really nicely. It's like a nice way of kind of going, oh yeah, I can see why he did that. Whereas outwardly, I think it's more of just a case of make it simpler and it's easier to get into, and yeah, we'll just do that. It's way easier for people if they can just go, okay, well, I know what this squad does because they all do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sorted. Don't have to think about it too much. You can just get straight into rolling, and you don't have to sit there and fiddle with what guns you want to take for what scenario and mess about with points values for that. It's relatively simple compared to that. So I think there's a nice symmetry for them, but I don't think it was necessarily a planned thing. I think it was just make it easier. Oh, that works nicely. We can justify that if we need to, but I don't know that they've ever kind of said outright that that's why the Primaris stuff is so like limited in terms of options and kind of the way the squads are outfitted. I don't know that they've ever said that out loud, but
no,
it's worked nicely.
It has. There is one thing though that I question, which, okay, so do we know offhand how many boxes or how many Marines come in a Intercessor box? Is it 10 or 5?
Intercessor is 10.
It's 10, right? Okay, so yeah. Whether it was 5 or 10, it's the same thing, because an Impulsor only carries 6. So that's the hot dog bun scenario.
Admittedly, that is one bit where even now I do not understand why the Impulsor was not just a Primaris Rhino.
Right.
To this day, I still have no idea why they did that. Because if the one thing that so many people were asking for was just, can we get a transport that isn't covered in guns? Could we have that, please? It's like the equivalent of Firstborn only having a Land Raider to rock around in. It doesn't make a huge amount of sense, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah.
And so when the Impulsor was shown off, I was like, oh, actually, they've got a transport. That's good.
Yeah.
And they're like, it carries 6. Why? Why have you done that? Why have you done it? It's bigger than a Rhino. Why have you made it carry fewer guards? What was the thinking there?
It didn't make sense to me either.
It means you've got to split well, if you've got 2 impulsors, you've got to buy 20 intercessors to get your 12 in there, and then you've got 8 left over.
Yep.
Do you then just do a squad of 5? Do you put a squad of... If you're doing like an optimized list, you're not going to sit there and go, oh yeah, 8 intercessors, perfect. That's not going to... No one's going to do that. So what do you do with the others? Well, you have to buy another box, but then you're still just stuck no matter what you do. Really bizarre decision, which I still don't quite understand, but... So occasionally they just do stuff like that, don't they?
You would need to get 5 impulsors before the amount actually equals. Is it 5?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is 5 impulsors.
Yeah,
and 3 boxes of intercessors.
So you need 5 impulsors to get the right number of impulsors to intercessors.
But it still wouldn't be, because you wouldn't have the right number of sergeants.
That's true. Yeah, it still wouldn't work because you'd still be down 2. 1 or 2
You'd be
sergeants.
2 sergeants. You'd be down 2.
You'd be down 2 sergeants.
Yeah.
I mean, you could kit bash them, but that's not really the point. It's still still weird and a weird decision.
I guess. Oh, the only way you could do it is, okay, what's that new box set with the it's not the Elite Edition, it's the one smaller than that.
The Recruit Edition.
Recruit Edition, yeah, where it comes with 5 assault intercessors and 1 lieutenant.
Yes. Yeah, you could get away with that.
Yeah, because a lieutenant can go in there with them, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I
think so too. The chat will correct us very swiftly.
Oh, definitely.
But I think that could probably work right there. I mean, and heck, that box is super. You even made a video about that.
It's great value.
Yeah.
It's super good value. It makes no sense. It does make sense, but it's like that that box is one of the best examples I think I've seen for a while of
the value
of Games Workshop's like multiple ecosystems, like multiple pricing models. Because you've got the main one for 40k as a whole, where stuff is undeniably kind of expensive, but we don't care. We just keep buying it anyway. Yeah. And then you've got the entry points, which don't match up at all. You've got like the combat patrols, and you've got like even like the battle forces, like the carriage one that I've got over there. They are actually, when you look at how much you save compared to buying all the stuff separately, they are really good deals.
It's insane,
and
it's insane.
It's just to get the hooks in. And I think sometimes, like I was guilty of it when I saw the price on the Recruit Edition for the first time, where I was looking at them and I was like, that's £1 more than a box of Warriors. Yeah. And there's more stuff in there than what there's like double the number of models. What is this? And every now and again, I think you kind of have to remind yourself and go, yeah, but that's not the same purpose. They're not fulfilling the same need. That is to get people in.
It's a loss leader.
Buy that box and go, oh, I can have a game with what's in here. This is really cool. It's not that expensive. I can get in there. That's cool. And then they will do that and go, well, I want to expand my Warriors. Yes. I want to get something else.
That's what it is.
What should I get? And then by that point, they've probably forgotten that actually the Recruit Edition was only, £1 more, and go, I'll get another box of Warriors. And they buy the box of Warriors, and actually they could have got the Warriors and then more again if they just bought the same box twice.
Yeah.
But it's crazy. I always find it really interesting with Games Workshop stuff, because you have this really interesting kind of sliding scale of how much stuff is, where on the lower end you have got things like the Recruit Edition, the Elite Edition, which is still, the Elite Edition is still really good value compared to buying that stuff separately. You have those. You have things like the combat patrols and the start collecting. You have the kind of special boxes they do for around Christmas time with the battle forces. Mm-hmm. But then that slides all the way up to like 120 quid for a Mega Gargant, or £105 for a Monolith. Which, when you look at what's in the Recruit Edition, and then look at like buying a Monolith, the disconnect in price is massive.
Yeah, it's massive.
But the thing is, you're never going to go from just buying the Recruit Edition to, and now I want that giant Monolith. You're not going to go from, I have a squad of Warriors and a Royal Warden, to, I need a monolith. You build up to it.
Mm.
You get other stuff. It's like, oh well, the Canoptek Wraiths look cool, or maybe I'll get some Scorpack Destroyers to go with them. That would be cool. They're in the Elite Edition. Maybe I get that box, and then they get the hooks into you with the actual reasonably priced plastic, and then you're sitting there looking at just the perfect number of points of Necrons that would be. It would be either 1750 or 2000 if you just had that one giant pyramid-looking thing that you'd seen the other day, and then you get it, and funnily enough, you've just bought the monolith because everything else was actually not too bad. And it's that kind of scale of, okay, we're getting you in. Why not do a combat patrol to go with this? Okay, with the hooks are sinking ever deeper, you totally need Zarek, and you definitely need the monolith. Let's go. And then you buy it. And then once you bought that, you're like, well, I finished my Necron army. What now? And then the madness just begins again. And you just end up buying even more. It's hard to fault them for how well they do that kind of thing, to be honest. They're very good at I think they're very good at getting people in.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, you can see the shelves behind me, and that's not counting the stuff in the boxes over there that I haven't got out for a while. Before you know it, you're like, I've been doing this for like 10 years, and I don't know how many nights I have, but I know that I only wanted one, and I don't understand how this happened, but here we are. It's just, might as well carry on now.
I'm seeing a very nice looking Lord of Skulls behind you.
Oh, that's a Slanesh Lord of Skulls.
It's it. I gotta see this.
Yeah. Hang on, let me grab it. I will. In fact, did I put a picture on Twitter? You know what? I will just grab it. It's easier. So,
because from a distance, I mean, the shape of it was corny.
Oh, it's you can't. You just a Lord of Skulls when you see one. So let me see if I can get that.
Whoa!
So that's got parts from the Keeper of Secrets on it. By the way, Khorne, and especially the Lord of Skulls, has got better brand commitment than Batman. There's so many Khorne symbols on this. I know it's a Lord of Skulls, but come on. So yeah, there's Keeper of Secrets claws. There's parts from the Keeper of Secrets. One of the alternative heads, big Slanesh symbol. Some of the cape sections from the Shalaxi Hellbane setup for the Keeper of Secrets kit. The spear from Shalaxi Hellbane as well. And a knight helm because I didn't like the face. The face was too cornate. And I covered the comedy plow on the front, which is so weird. I still don't really understand what the idea was behind that, but I love it anyway. I couldn't get the Khorne symbol off that because the whole plow is a Khorne symbol.
There's one massive symbol.
I tried to make it out of plasticard and it didn't look great, so I instead used green stuff and covered the Khorne symbol over with like flesh that had been like melted to it. And then I made a green stuff pipe so that the flesh could be kept alive using blood. So it's got like a bloody drape of flesh across the plow that's kept alive during battle for whatever reason. I needed to cover it up, and I was like, "That's gross. That's gross and pretty Slanesh. We'll do that.
We'll do that. Yeah, we'll go with it because it's good. I love it, and people are calling it a Kiribash.
Oh yeah, I very rarely leave things as standard. It's not really something I'm all that capable of, to be honest.
How do you feel them as?
Something else. Sorry?
How do you feel them as? Do you feel them as a Lord of Skulls, or do you feel them as something else?
That's fielded as a Lord of Skulls. I just hope that, well, generally, I'm just like, well, you can let me get away with this, right? And usually the answer is yes.
Oh, yeah, of course.
It's the same thing as... I accidentally collected a Chaos Knights army, which culminated in the Lord of Skulls.
Accidentally? What do you mean accidentally?
Well, yeah. Well, when the first knight was shown off, I loved it, and I was like, "This is." I never thought I'd see something outside of the Lord of Skulls of this scale. Like this is, they've clearly made this to be its own force. This is awesome. I want one, so I bought it, and I put it together, and I was not great at painting at that stage, and I just gave it like a grey and black paint job, and was just like, "That'll do. That's fine," and left it for ages. Then the Chaos Knights were revealed. And immediately I was like, "Oh God, they've done what I wanted to do to the knight before I really knew how to do it."
Yes,
I'm gonna have to buy one. I need one of those. Okay, I'll get a Chaos Knight. I'll leave the one I've got. That can just be a Loyalist Knight. That's fine. But I'll get the Chaos one, and I'll do that Iron Warriors colors. That'll be fun. So I got the Chaos Knight, started painting it up as Iron Warriors, and then thought, you know what? I should have it so that it matches like my Emperor's Children stuff. I should have an Emperor's Children like a just a knight that follows them round, some sort of like weird twisted warp monstrosity thing. That would be fun. So I started working on it, took part of it apart because it previously had a normal loadout, and dug out an old Defiler that I had in the loft from when the Defiler was first released as a model, which makes me feel old as hell saying that. And I ripped the claws and the armors off it. So, like the big pincers that it's got at the front, I ripped those off it and put both of them on one side of the knight with the chainsword on the other side. So it's a 3-armed knight with 2 Defiler claws and a chainsword, which
Awesome.
I just thought looked cool.
Yeah.
Then I had an idea for a knight that carried a weapon like underslung, like a heavy bolter. Because I've done a series of daft conversions that basically revolve around that. So there's a Centurion holding a heavy bolter, like underslung in both hands. I've got a normal like Castaferum Dreadnought holding I think it's the Onslaught Gatling Cannon from a Redemptor, but underslung like a heavy bolter. Then I got a Redemptor and had that holding the Avenger Gatling Cannon from a Knight, like in both hands like a heavy bolter. And then I was like, well, clearly the next logical step is to do that with a Chaos Knight, surely. So I did. I bought a Chaos Knight, and then the next time I was at Forge World, I bought the Vulcan Mega Bolter for the Chaos Warhound, and I put that on that. In fact, I'll grab that quickly.
Yes,
it's like the thing I'm most proud of in terms of nearly most proud of. I do a lot of kit bashing, so
we're in for a treat, guys. This is we don't typically get to see this kind of goodies.
You can go down there. Don't fall apart, please. I've got to be careful because the gun isn't glued on. It just rests somehow magically. Ooh. So yeah, I've got the what is it called? Yeah, the Vulcan Mega Bolter from the Chaos Warhound.
Yes, wow.
Held by the Chaos Knight in like an underslung fashion.
Dang.
And it counts as having 2 Avenger Gatling cannons because what else are you gonna run that as?
Right.
And I also I don't know how this happened, but I had a spare missile launcher from one of the Custodes Dreadnoughts. I forget which one it is. So that's got 2 missile launchers on the top, just because I thought it needed something a little bit extra. So yeah, that was
yes.
That was again kind of just a spur of the moment. I thought that'd be a fun thing to do. I'll do it, and then got the parts and immediately realized that first of all, something that I didn't even consider at the time, the bolter from a Chaos Warhound significantly heavier than a Chaos Knight.
Really?
Way heavier.
Oh, because it's more dense?
It's just a chunk of resin.
Yeah.
It's not even multiple parts. The gun is just one massive lump of resin.
Yeah.
So
is he forward heavy because of that?
Massively.
Yeah.
To get it to stand up, the feet are glued to cork, which is pinned to the base.
Yeah.
And then around each toe of the feet, there is wire that has been twisted under the base and then looped over the foot.
Wow.
Just to hold it in place. It's super solid now, but trying to get it to stand upright was an absolute nightmare. And the only way I could do it was by reposing one of the legs so that it was like raised up and resting on something.
Yeah.
Like I literally had to have the model bracing the weight of the Mega Bolter because otherwise it just fell over forwards. Even with the I tried pinning before I reposed it, and I couldn't even do it then because just the weight of it meant that even on the base, the whole thing just tipped forward onto its face every time.
Yeah.
So I had to cut the leg apart and repose that, and getting that to stand up unassisted with the Mega Bolter not resting on the legs was like the best day for kit bashing that I've had just forever. Because I was like, I've done this, and I'll be honest, a Mega Bolter is kind of expensive. It's not like the Chaos Knight is 95 quid. The Mega Bolter was 45 quid. So if I don't get this to work, that's a significant amount of money that I've just like thrown away on nothing. Like, what am I going to do with it? I can't do anything else except buy an actual Warhound to put it on. That's not an option.
No.
I'm not doing that. So I've got to make it work. It took a while, but I did get there in the end. It's one of the things that I'm most happy with kit bashing. The other two is admittedly this is Age of Sigmar, but I made a nightmare out of Drycha Hammerdreth. Because I had an idea for a village that hung criminals from trees in the forest that the village was in, but the forest had like magic, like just kind of undead magic in it, and so the trees got fed up of being hung from and came alive and started killing people. So I made Drycha Hammerdreth into what is now the horror of Blackwood, because that has now become my Sylvaneth army, which I had not planned on making, but I've made that now, and I'm like, that was really fun. I need to make more. I did a similar thing with accidentally ending up with a Gargant army.
I have to agree with some of the comments here. They're saying you're as mad as a hatter, and we love you for it.
That's an X. I'll take it. I'm happy with that.
That's super cool. I love the idea behind that.
The only other one is there we go. So this is my Gargant for my Age of Sigmar Gargant army, which is from the Realm of Metal. And this, I've got 6 of these now. Ooh. And it entirely came down to randomly sitting there, putting some ambots together and going, you know what? I reckon you could stack the legs. If I put both sets of legs on, but stacked them on top of each other, it would make like a really lanky mech, which could look kind of cool. And I did it and realized that it did look kind of cool, but it also didn't look particularly 40k. It looked a bit more sort of like kind of steampunky kind of thing. So I got some parts from a Warp Lightning cannon that I had left over from when I was making my Dreadnought army, because I put a Skaven Warp Lightning cannon on top of a Dreadnought that only had one arm, because why not? And I put the massive like Warpstone rock on the back of it, gave it a Custodes shield and spear, and went, oh, this is actually kind of awesome. I like this. I don't know what it is, but I like it. That's cool. I made a second one, then I did a half-assed paint job, put them away, and then never touched them, because I was like, I don't know what these are. I don't know what I can use them as. I ran them as Contemptors in one game with permission from people, but it was like, I don't know what this is, really. I've made it, and it was just a fun project that's kind of unusable, which is a shame, but there you go. I then decided I wanted to make some more and thought, well, I need an excuse. So I just put them on Twitter and went, these are about, I forget how tall they are, but I gave the height measurement and went, this is how tall they are base to the top of the model. What can I use these as? Like, what can I do with these? And someone said, oh, Gargants. Use them as Gargants from the Realm of Metal in Age of Sigmar. They're perfect for that. And so I went, that's good, because I've already started building 2 more, and then I ordered 2 more ambots. So I've got 6 of these, and now I have a reason for doing it. Brilliant. A lot of my armies tend to end up like that. I'm like, I've got an idea, and then I do it and go, I don't know what I was doing with that. What should I do with it? Help. And then someone gives me an actual army, and then I go and make more of them, because, yeah, kit bashing still the most fun bit for me, really. It's by far the most... It's like a mix of like therapeutic and just fun at the same time.
Would you say, out of the pillars of the hobby, the modeling aspect, the playing, the lore, would you say that modeling and hobbying is the top of your list there?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. It's for a while it was just the modeling side of things and not the painting, because I didn't like painting for the longest time because I wasn't good at it, and I was like not good at it to the extent that it made me not want to learn to get better. It was just like, well, every time I try and do something new, it fails. So, what am I supposed to do? I'll just have to. I just paint it because I don't want to be the person with an unpainted horde of orcs. Because when I was younger, I was that person, and even I didn't like being that person. But like, I just didn't want to be the person who had unpainted models or would just like base coat them and then not do anything. I didn't like bringing that stuff to games, and it was similar thing with starting to play D&D. Other people were painting their character models and stuff. I'm like, well, I don't want to be the one person who shows up with an unpainted Reaper Mini or something. I want to actually do something with it. So I kind of painted mostly out of spite. It was like, well, I'm just going to get it done. I don't like it, but it needs to be done, so I'll just blast through it. And if it looks passable, then that's a win, and I don't really care. And that was the deal up until November of 2019. I want to say, yeah, I think November of 2019, where I got talking to the guys from Artis Opus who do brushes,
Mm-hmm.
and they said, we want to send you some brushes. And I was like, you've heard me talk about painting, right? You're like, I don't like it. And they're like, yeah, that's why we want to send you some and see what you think. See if maybe it there's a technique in there that would work for you and would, make things easier, or actually, dare we say, enjoyable, maybe. So they sent a box of their Series D dry brushes over, and I started, like, I'd never used anything like it before. My extent for things like trying to paint detail or trying to do things like blending on models was, I'm going to paint it 2 colors and then do a 3rd color for the trim, and that's it, because I don't know how to do anything else. So they sent me this box with like a little booklet that tells you how to use them, and I got a creature caster model that I'd had for ages but been too intimidated to try, and gave them the most trial by fire like review video of anything I've ever done, because I just sat there and went, I don't like painting, I don't know how to use these, this model has intimidated me for ages. If we come out at the end of this and this model's wings look half decent, clearly this is good. And then I just started painting following the instructions on the booklet, and immediately went, oh, this is easy. This is actually pretty easy, and it's really fun, and I can do the things that I've never been able to manage before. And literally from that point on, I went from hating painting to looking at every model and going, okay, what can I do with that? What can I do? How do I paint it? How do I want to blend from this color to that color? Do I want to do mostly dry brushing? I need to try and learn how to do glazing. I should get an airbrush. And it just massively took off from there. Like the Chaos Knight with this bolter, that model, it's just dry brushing and that's about it. All I've done is just dry brush over the armor panels. And I remember like finishing painting one of the knights and looking at it and going, literally 4 months ago, I would not have been capable of this. This is great. I want to keep doing it. That's like completely opened up that side of the hobby, because it's gone from being like, okay, I enjoy building and kit bashing, don't enjoy painting, to, okay, I want to get better at all of this side of things. Like kit bashes got better because I needed to do a better job of them, because that way painting them would be easier and the end model would look better. So a lot of like shortcuts that I used to take for kit bashing, I stopped doing and actually started, trying to make it work properly. Instead of just going, okay, well, I've got super glue in this part, let's go. It was a case of, well, if I do it that way, it's going to be harder to paint. I need to be able to remove it and then put it back. And so that led to kind of improving how I build stuff in terms of pinning stuff that you wouldn't necessarily think of pinning. Like a lot of the stuff on this Drycher, all of these spikes that stick out of her, which is like they're wooden spikes from a Age of Sigmar scenery kit, they're all pinned, because when I come to paint that, I'm going to have to take those spikes off, because there's absolutely no way I'm going to get anything close to a decent finish without it. Yeah, it's very much kit bashing, then painting. Being able to use the models on the tabletop is fun, but it's like, it's one of those things where I don't necessarily miss if I don't get to play for a little bit, because I get enough enjoyment out of that kind of initial process. Even down to planning armies, I find a lot of fun because I know what I'm going to do with them. I like getting a regular game in, but if I miss one, I'm not like, that's it. That this week ruined. I've not managed to get my game in. Instead, it's like, okay, well, disappointing, but I have got all of these other projects that I wanted to do. That gives me time to build this, paint that, plan the other thing that I was thinking about doing. Yeah. It's definitely build and paint, and then like actually play after that.
Play after, yeah. The crazy part about that story from that. What was the name of the brush company again? Opus.
So Artist Opus.
Artist
Yeah.
Opus. Okay, so I think that's probably the best testimonial, organic testimonial that they could possibly hope for, because it's like we took this guy who doesn't like painting to
And the thing
really
is, I was
liking
really vocal
painting
about it as well.
and like being very transparently vocal about it. It's like, hey, listen, guys, I don't like painting. I got these brushes, and we're just gonna see what happens. And it just happened to be that it worked out well. So like that's probably the best case study for a brush company imaginable.
I did say to them, like, after I put that video up, because I said I'm not going to tell you what I thought. You need to watch it, because I want this to be a thing where you don't really know whether I like this or not until you see it. Because the way I even did it was they even offered to. They're like, well, do you want one of us to go through the technique with you? And I went, no. I was like, I'm doing it. No, it's like, reasonably, a paintbrush company is not going to be able to give one-on-one tuition to everyone who buys the product.
Right.
Just because I've got an audience, that doesn't mean that I should get special treatment in that regard.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a case of, well, I'm going to try these brushes out, but the person who developed them gave me like a 2-hour lesson beforehand. Like, I'm not going to do that, because that's not honest. I'm just going to approach this from the standpoint of, I don't like painting, and these might change that. Or we'll get to the end of the video and I'm going to go, that didn't work. Sorry, but it's just not. It just doesn't. It's not. Even if the worst thing I say is it's just not for me and I don't like the way it works, it would still be an honest reaction to it. And I did say after the fact, like, they watched the video and they got back and they said exactly that. They were like, that's like the best kind of natural testimonial we've ever got for these things.
Yeah, for sure.
And I did say, you realize that if I'd hated them, I would still have put the video up, right? I would have apologized and I would have said, look, I'm sorry, guys, but it's just not for me. But I still would have said, I would have just gone, yeah, no, don't like it still. Don't like painting. I'm afraid I don't like the brushes. But actually, they were really good, so it worked. But it was just like...
Yeah, they're taking a risk.
They said with the reactions to that video, they were like, we're quite glad you liked that, because that could have been quite bad. It's like, I'm sorry, but I feel like it's the only fair way to do it. I think that's the only fair way to do it. If you get like extra stuff, and if you get things that have been carefully selected, it's so much harder to be honest about what you think of it. Like, if a company says they want to send something, I think you kind of have a duty to go, okay, that's fine. Just send me some of the things you have in stock right now. Let's go. Let's do that. I did that with Raging Heroes as well, where they got in touch and I was like, okay, just send me some of the things that you have available. If you've got something that you've got like a surplus of, then send me some of that, and I'll just take a look at whatever you send. Because I don't think companies are in the habit of specially selecting stuff, like kind of going through and going, oh, well, that cast is great. Okay, there's no flashing on this, so therefore we'll send that one. I don't think people do that, but it's a lot easier to give that kind of, I guess, plausible deniability if you can just go, okay, I said send me a bunch of random stuff. They sent me some random stuff that I knew is in stock because I checked their website, and this is what you would expect to receive if you ordered these items. And that can be for better or worse. There's been stuff that I've got and I've gone, this is not great. Like, there's way too much flashing, or like the cast isn't great. There's bubbling in the resin, and this particular model, out of the stuff I was sent, I don't know that I can even put this together. Like, I've had that once before where I just flat out said, I don't know if I could rescue this.
That's good, because that keeps the companies accountable and honest, and it makes it so the viewers watching are trusting of the opinion that you give, which I believe is your X factor and why your videos have gained the popularity that they've had, is because and this is what I feel anyway when I watch your videos. I think, okay, I know that when Kirioth says something, he's speaking his mind, and it's a genuine thought, no matter what it is. And he'll even tell you when he doesn't know about something. He's like, you know what, guys, I don't really know much about this, but these are just my thoughts. Let's discover this together. or it's like you come from it from a, hey, I've been doing this for, I've been looking at this for many years, and these are my thoughts on it. So no matter what it is, it's just your raw thoughts on it. And I think that's what's so relatable about your videos. You're just speaking whatever comes to you. Really, it's very organic.
That's the thing that like I kind of realized very early on when I started to record videos was, whenever I sat down with friends and talked about this stuff in person, before we had things like Warhammer Community and preview streams and, you know, just the level of communication that we have with Games Workshop now, which is so above and beyond anything that I experienced when I was a teenager buying their stuff. Like around 3rd edition, it was like, is something new coming out? I had no idea. No one will know until it happens. Everything in terms of like leaks and rumors was just like, oh yeah, my friend knows a guy who manages a Games Workshop store, and he knows that they might be doing this thing in like 6 months. And that was like the level of knowing what was coming. And whenever we sat down and talked about it, no one was like in that group, like no one was ever really afraid to go, well, actually, I think this. It was just a case of we just talked about whatever was happening and what was interesting us. And like really early on, I kind of was like, well, I don't want to say this or that in case people don't just disagree, but like actively think that I'm like belittling them for their opinion. If I don't agree with something that they think, I don't want them to think that it's like a personal thing. It's like, yeah, but at the end of the day, if you're doing this kind of thing, all you really have is honesty or lying to people. And if you're going to sit down and record the way you feel about stuff, there's no point lying about it. And especially when it comes to things like hobby stuff, like it's like just tabletop wargaming and stuff, and modeling, kit bashing, painting. All of it is like it's like a communal experience. When you look at like the communities that have built up around 40k, around Age of Sigmar, again around Warhammer Fantasy before that went the way it did, like it was all people who had a shared love and interest of something. And for the most part, it was people who had a shared love and interest in every aspect of it. If you're going to talk to people about that online with the capacity to reach thousands of people, it just struck me as like almost a waste of time trying to give opinions that no one would disagree with. But the most important thing is just outright say, I don't know a huge amount about this thing, but whether I like or dislike it, that's just it. And there's plenty of stuff that I've said that people full on disagree with, like the Primaris thing being one of them. It's not like the way that Cole did it. I know people still don't like that kind of way of looking at it, but then again, there are a few people who are like, yeah, I had the same thought. It's the same thing as, I think the most controversial video I've ever put on my channel was talking about the Impulsor and the Invicta tactical warsuit when they were revealed. Love the Invicta. Absolutely love that model. No one else does.
No one else.
Literally nobody. Impulsor, I looked at it and I was like, I hate this. I don't like it at all. I think it looks terrible. Why is it open back? I don't like the way it looks in any capacity. Hard disagree on that viewpoint. The thing is, I even specified in that video, like, I think also it's very easy to be overly positive or overly negative, and everything is so much more grey than that.
Yeah.
That even with the Invicta, I said at the time, I like it because I like mechs. You know I like mechs because I have 4,000 points worth of Space Marine Dreadnoughts. I have an entire army of just Dreadnoughts. So you know that I would like that. And whilst I like it, I even said in the video, I don't think it's a Space Marine thing. I like the model, I like the concept of it, but why do they give it to Space Marines? Why have they got it? It makes no sense. Like, what have you given it to Space Marines for? Give it to Guard or someone, or even like Sisters of Battle. Don't give it to Space Marines, and it's not stealthy. Look at it. You're being daft now. Love the model, but who they gave it to and the context in which it exists, don't like that. But the thing is, you can have that. Like, not everything has to be this is perfect or this is terrible. There's so much kind of middle ground where there's so few models, I think, where people will look at them and go, I like literally everything about that. There is no part of that I don't have any sort of like not positive reaction to. It's the same with all of it. It's like, contrary to the Impulsor, the Gladiator, quite a good looking tank. I quite like it because they fixed all the stuff I hate about the Impulsor.
They closed it
Gave
in.
it, they gave it a proper turret. They closed it in.
That's
They
funny.
made it look less like an orc had made it. Frankly, like it just looks better to me. So,
Okay, here's a question. What do you think of the ATV?
I flip flopped on that massively. I liked it initially because I was like, it's fixed the issue I always had with the attack bike, because the attack bike is an annoying vehicle because it can only fire in like a pathetic 45-degree angle and only from one side. Like, it's such a terrible design. And I always used to think it was a terrible design. And initially, I liked the ATV purely because I thought they'd fixed that. And then I looked at it again and went, wait, no, they haven't. It's exactly the same. You still can't turn it like beyond like a pathetic shallow angle from side to side. The guy's standing up, so he's even more unstable than he was in the attack bike. And there's an antenna right next to him. So it's fixed none of the issues that I had. So I started out going, I like it because it's not as bad as this. And then went, oh no, it's just as bad. It's just as bad. And on that basis, I now don't like it because it's not fixed any of the issues I had with the thing it is ostensibly replacing. At least in that way, I am quite consistent when it comes to stuff like that. It's the same with the Outrider bikes. I really like the Outriders. They look awesome. Stupid design. They couldn't get over a small rock. Like, the heavy armor around the bike looks dead good. But they can't turn. And they also can't go over rough terrain, which is exactly the issue that I had with the previous generation of bikes, because they're supposed to be all-terrain vehicles, but they have a ground clearance of 0.5 millimeter. And it's just not like there are enough roads in England with like humps to like traffic calming. So there's like a hump in the middle of the road. There are enough of those in England, and there are enough people who have lowered their cars to silly degrees for me to have personally seen what happens when something with like millimeters of ground clearance goes over a small bump, and it never ends well. And it would never end well for normal bikes, and it would never work well for Outriders either. But the plus side to the Outriders is that they do look more heavily armored. They look more Space Marine to me than the original bikes ever did, because they look so much more chunky. Like, they're longer, they're chunkier, they're more heavily armored. I like the way the bolter placement is done on those as well. But again, it's exactly the same issues where it's like it wouldn't actually work. But then again, as soon as you start down that rabbit hole, I don't think you can judge anything in 40k on would that actually work. There's there's like levels of suspension of disbelief. Like, I'm perfectly happy to have an army with 3 Land Raiders in it. That's something that I am currently planning to do to fill out. Well, I say fill out, to add to my Emperor's Children. I want 3 Land Raiders. I love Land Raiders. They're an awesome vehicle. They also wouldn't work all that well. There's no visible suspension. Like, how would they even get anywhere? But it doesn't matter because they're really cool. But it's like, it's very like cognitive dissonance in a way. It's like, I don't like this vehicle because that gun clearly wouldn't be able to shoot anyone, but I'm perfectly happy with this giant box on treads. It doesn't make a huge amount of sense because it's like applying 2 different conflicting criteria to a fictional universe and models that wouldn't really work all that well in real life. But for some of them are just so good that I don't care, and some of them don't have that overriding cool factor. Like, the Land Raider being not a great real life tank doesn't matter because it looks awesome. The ATV being a rubbish vehicle for what it's supposed to be is more unacceptable because the base design for me isn't good enough to elevate it to I don't care status, which again, I always say is like super hypocritical. It's like, it's very hypocritical and it's very particular because it's like, well, if you're going to judge one by this criteria, why not judge the other? But I don't think that's not necessarily how.
That's not how it works.
Especially, it's not how it works.
It's
not how like subjective opinion works. It's not how things work when you look at like art or listen to music. There could be a song that has all the ingredients of something you would normally like. It could, if you're into heavy metal and you hear a song that has got, heavy distorted guitar, down tuned, you could have all the things that you should enjoy, but you just don't like the song. I think it's similar it's similar to that. It's just a taste thing. I think it always is, and it's one of the reasons why I'm always, whenever I'm talking about models, it's like maybe it's just me, or it probably is just me in a lot of cases. But I like this, even if I don't think it works necessarily within a certain faction, or don't think that it 100% fits in with other stuff related to that faction. There are parts of nearly every model that I can look at and go, I think they've done a good job. And that's the other thing as well. I think they can do a good job on things that you don't like. There's been stuff that Games Workshop has made. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. There's a few Stormcast models, for instance, that I don't like at all. The guys with the long like tabard thing, they're like they've got their armor, but like just beneath the chest, they've got these long strips of cloth. I think they're casters of some kind. I can never remember what all of the AOS stuff is called, but I like a lot of the Stormcast Eternal stuff. It's the evocators, that's it. I don't like the way evocators look at all, but I can still look at them and go, they've actually done a really good job. Like, I don't like the models, but the cloth looks like it's moving in sync with the rest of the body. There's a good sense of motion to it. The actual sculpts have been done really well. The design might not be to my taste, but I can't sit there and go, they've messed that up, because it's not true. In this specific instance, it's like, I don't like it, but I can totally see why other people would. And I try and kind of put that across as well, because there are some, as I say, there are some models that I just do not like at all. But I look at them and go, I don't like that, but I know full well that I know people are losing their minds with how good this is. It's just not for me, and that's fine. You know, not everything needs to be. I think that's something that is, it's true for everything, but when it comes to things as personal and subjective as like hobbies that you've dedicated so many hours of your time to, I think sometimes it's easy to look at stuff and not think, okay, that's not for me, and instead think, but that should be for me. And I think sometimes that can happen, and I just try my best to kind of go, I hate that. Impulsor being an example, I don't like it, but I know plenty of people do, and I know plenty of people really like it, and I'm not going to sit there and say that they're wrong for liking it. It's just not my thing. It's just, that's all it is. But yeah, it's I try very hard to try and lay that out as much as I possibly can. So the last thing I want is anyone kind of going, oh yeah, but he thinks his opinion's gospel. It's like, no. I'm very, very clear that a lot of the time I will literally say something out loud and then go, but I would imagine that I'm the only person who thinks like
that. We're going to change gears here for a sec, and we're going to do a chaos comment bomb. So folks, this is a YouTube channel recommended by Kirioth. So I'm going to post the link in the video chat. So if you've never participated in a Chaos Comment Bomb before, this is how we do it. I'm going to post a link in the chat, and it'll bring you to a YouTube video, and you'll leave a comment on this YouTube video, and the comment could be something like, Dave and Kirioth say hi from the Shrine of Chaos. Or it could be, continue doing what you're doing, bringing the past into the present. Or maybe it's, thank you for your videos. They are excellent. Or whatever it is. It doesn't matter what you leave, it just as long as they know they've been Chaos Comment Bombed by the Shrine of Chaos. I'm going to leave a number of links here so that it is unquestionable which link you need to click on. I will spam it. And I like to go to the video just to see the real-time update of the comments. It's just fun. Now, I hope that these comments are linked to this channel's notifications on their phone. It's more fun that way. I rarely know the response, but this is Snipe and Wib, and this video is Warhammer Armies Undead featuring Oculus Imperia Codex Compliant. And this is where they do a series of bringing things that were, like letting people know about old things in the game and the lore and the history, and kind of just bringing it to light, right? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. The Codex Compliance series they do just takes, it's almost like old forgotten lore of Games Workshop, taking a look at old codexes and going through them in detail, stuff that informed the design of them, telling you things like the origins of certain games that Games Workshop still make or have made. informing, like as I said to you before we went live, the fact that Games Workshop had a record label, like the fact that that was a thing that existed, which I had no idea about until they did a video about it.
Oh, that's so
Like
strange.
there's just so many times where I'll kind of look at what they've put up, watch it, and go, I didn't know half of this. Like I thought I was pretty well versed in some of this, but apparently not. No, I had no clue.
And so that's them. So check out their stuff. This is a pay it forward to these folks. I personally have never heard of this channel before, so I'm glad you brought my attention to this channel. And I look forward to checking out their videos, especially the compliance stuff.
Someone said old codex, like old codexes. I wrote most of them when they came out. That is a slight issue. Like as they move forward slightly, there are ones that I'm like, yeah, no, I had that. That's now I feel ancient. It's I have to admit, nothing they've put out has been quite as has felt quite as brutally aging as the reintroduction of the Wolfen. That made me feel old because I saw so many people going, "Oh wow, the Wolfen! We've never had Wolfen before," and I'm like, "Yes, we did. Yes, we did. We had in Codex Eye of Terror. I had a 13th Company Space Wolves army with the old metal.
The
Wolfen.
metal, yeah."
There were people like leaving comments on my videos that were like, "This is so cool. They've actually made models for these," and I'm like, "Please stop, please." I'm not that old. I promise. You're just making me feel it when you're like, yeah, but that codex was released the year I was born. And I'm like, go away. Stop watching my videos.
Okay, so I have a couple questions for you. These are more for kind of like getting to know Kirioth behind the scenes. I'm just out of curiosity. Is your YouTube channel what you do? Is that your full-time thing?
Yes. Yeah, it is. It is now my full-time thing.
Fantastic. I love it.
It's been like the main source for a while. I was getting away with still having a couple of contracts from an old job of mine until pandemic happened. And then unfortunately those went away. But yeah, it's now the main income.
That's fantastic. I love it. So the best way to support Kirioth is on his Patreon. Links have been provided in this post. So you'll see a link to his Patreon plus a link to his YouTube channel, and subscribe to his YouTube channel if you are not already. And
you have literally by saying that reminded me that I am going to update that because I started a second channel late last year, which is solely for kit bashing and painting.
Oh, nice.
Because I'm trying to just get way better at both. And I thought a fun thing to do would be to just document as much of it as possible, including the things that go disastrously wrong. Because I'm going on the basis that if I've had an idea to do something, surely someone else will have had that idea as well. And even if I'm showing them the wrong way to do it, so that it's like, I tried this method and it flopped. It was an absolute disaster. They can at least see that and go, I will not do that. I will avoid the horrendous mistake you've made and do it differently. So that's going to be kind of stuff to do with that is also going to be on that same Patreon for the main channel, because it's all sort of rough, like it's all me, so it's all kind of going to be condensed into that one space.
Fantastic, awesome. So that's very exciting to hear. I love it when I hear that, when YouTubers and content creators and they transition to doing that full time from their day job. It's
really nice how many, especially like 40K and just hobby YouTubers as a whole are able to do that now. It's like a properly affirming thing when you think about how niche like 40K, for instance, could have been. For it to be as popular as it is and enable so many people to like make a proper living out of things like battle reports. And like, I know you've talked to like Guy from Midwinter Minis and Scott from Miniac and stuff, actually having like that kind of creative side of things as well be such a big draw to people that they can actually sit there and do it full time. It's so good. Yeah, I just get, every time I hear that someone has managed to make the transition to doing the thing that they love full time as a job and not, just make it their main source of income. It just makes me happy every time. So I'm like, the more people who can do this, the more information there is, and the more people can talk about just the hobby in general, and especially things like tutorials and stuff. I would have killed for channels like Squidmar and Miniac and Midwinter and like channels like that, like Geek Gaming and stuff. I would have killed for stuff like that when I was younger, trying to get into the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, people showing me how to paint things quickly and easily,
Mm-hmm.
tutorials on like color theory and stuff. None of that. Like being able to just go, I want to paint a miniature. How do I do it? And being faced with like a wall of talented people who can tell you in detail, in easy to digest videos, this is how you get a really good finish. It's so good. It's so good for the hobby as a whole.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, we're certainly spoiled in this day and age to have all this talent at our raw fingertips.
Definitely.
Thank you very much, guys, for tuning in to the Shrine of Chaos. We certainly had a treat today with Kirioth, and be sure to check out his channels if you haven't done so already. Be sure to stay tuned next week, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, for the next episode of Shrine of Chaos. And that's exactly what this is, Mr. V, because you're asking, what is this? This is the Shrine of Chaos that you're watching right now. And any last thoughts before we go?
Well, actually, the something I wanted to say early on, but you've probably noticed over the course of this that my mouth has a habit of running way past what could be deemed acceptable, which is a bad habit that I've not got better at with working solo on a YouTube channel. Turns out that just leaves it wide open to just, endless run-on sentences. I've really enjoyed this, and this has been really surreal in a way, because I have, you guys, I've watched your battle reports from I don't even know how many years. Like before I even was using my channel to upload stuff, when I was on a different channel entirely, like starting out doing stuff on YouTube. We talked earlier about like when you could only do like 10-minute segments on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
and you couldn't upload anything longer, and then they changed it so that you could, but you had to be, I think you had to be partnered or have I think it was partnered, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You mentioning that, I literally used to watch those 10-minute chunks like all the way back then. So actually being able to sit and talk and to have this kind of interaction is really nice, but it is also kind of surreal because it's like mini wargaming is something that I've kind of experienced from afar for a long time. So the cross section is really nice, but I don't know. I don't think I at any point kind of expected to talk to any of you in this way, because I didn't really ever expect to be in this position, if that makes sense. It's like it's really nice that it's happened, but it's just one more thing in a long line of how did I end up here? This is awesome, but what happened? It's great, don't stop, but it's kind of nice to actually have the opportunity to do it.
And that's very, very well said. I couldn't agree more. I certainly understand that feeling, because when we first started, and actually even throughout the years of just continuing, there's always the next thing, and there's always like where if I stop and just kind of like sit back and look at where we've gone, it's nuts, right? Like where we are right now, it's normal. It feels like it's okay. This is where we are. But like 10 years ago, I couldn't have imagined that we'd be here, right?
Yeah.
And so
it's just the general kind of, not just the kind of explosion of YouTube as a something that people can make a living from, but particularly like the hobby side of things, like particularly the wargaming community. It's amazing, but it's still just so surreal that it's this popular, because when you're playing in a local gaming store at the age of like 13, which is so long ago now, and it's so depressing. Like just the fact that it would be a case if someone goes, "Oh yeah, of course, when you're 34, there's going to be a massive community on the internet talking about this all day and all night, and there's going to be multiple people who have entire businesses and livings revolving around this thing that you're just doing for fun."
mm-hmm.
it's still, I don't know, it still feels so surreal and so kind of, is this actually happening? Oh yeah, it is. This is amazing. But it's I'm kind of hoping that it'll always have that kind of edge of, yeah, no, this is real. Okay, it's fine. It is happening. It's not just like a really weird dream or like a really weird coincidence. It's just a thing that's happening. Nice.
Yeah, no, well said. Well, thanks very much. You're certainly welcome back in the Shrine anytime, especially with your Lord of Skulls converted Slaanesh awesomeness and your Knight. Those were fantastic. A treat to see those. Thanks for your thoughts and your ramblings. I will call them that, because I'm looking at the comments. They're like, yes, he should do a battle report with you guys. It would be 70% ramble and 30% game and 100% awesomeness.
Yeah.
Which I agree.
70% ramble is definitely accurate.
I mean, I agree. I think that's the whole thing, because they come to see the personality. So that's what they'd be getting if they saw you. So it's fantastic. So thanks again, guys. Thank you, Kirioth. Happy wargaming.
Thank you for